got no respect for us.
That's not bad for a guy his size.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the classic 1995 comedy crime thriller Get Shorty. The film is directed by Barry Sonnenfeld and it stars John Travolta, Gene Hackman, Rennie Russo, Danny DeVito, Dennis Farina, Delroy Lindo and James Gandolfini. Right. Where do I start with this one? Right, the film focuses on Chili Palmer, played by John Travolta, who is a gangster out in Miami. But he loves movies. He wants to get into the movie business, and he is sent to LA to collect money from somebody who supposedly died on a plane crash. When he gets there, he kind of calls to collect a debt from a movie producer, Harry Zim, played by Gene Hackman. They kind of strike up a bit of a friendship, and it looks like Chili Palmer, it's his way to get into the movies and produce movies. However, Ray Bones Barboni from Miami's having none of it, and he's going to follow him there to get his money. You've got Delroy Lindo's Bo Catlett, who is also trying to buy into the movie business, and Harry Zim owes him money, and it's up to Chili Palmer to hold off everybody while he tries to pave his way in LA. Right, what are my thoughts on Get Shorty? Well, trying to kind of explain this plot of this film is not particularly easy, I suppose. But needless to say, I think this is one of the finest movies of the 90s, personally. I used to watch this endlessly on VHS back in the day and DVD when I got it. A just fabulous film. Absolutely loved it. It's just one of those films where every frame is brilliant. Every piece of dialogue is fantastic. Every character is memorable. There's very little here that you can throw at this film in regards to fault. It's just, it's pretty much a masterpiece. I think the only thing that kind of spoils this film a little bit is the sequel, Be Cool. While it's certainly watchable, it is a desperately inferior film to this in every way. Get Shorty is an absolute classic, and it has aged beautifully. I rewatched it for this review. A few years since I've seen it. My God, it still looks brilliant. Still sounds brilliant. The dialogue is fantastic. And the characters are just so wonderful and so brilliantly written. Elmore Leonard, who wrote this story, it's based on one of his novels, this. He was one of those novelists in the 90s where, a lot of his stuff was adapted. I mean, they did this so much in the 90s, if John Grisham and all that kind of stuff. If you were seen to be hip, they were basing films on your novels left, right, and centre. And they did it with Elmore Leonard. They did Jackie Brown, Out of Sight, I seem to remember. There's probably more, but I can't just think of them anyway. And both those films were obviously very good. Jackie Brown, Quentin Tarantino. Out of Sight, was that Steven Soderbergh? I think it was. Both ultra cool, fantastic films, but the king of cool is this film, and in particular, Chili Palmer, played by John Travolta, who unbelievably initially apparently turned this role down, and apparently it was Tarantino that convinced him to do it, right off the back of Pulp Fiction. I mean, after his performance in Pulp Fiction, he was absolutely red hot, John Travolta, and to follow it up, he had such an incredible, 5 years or so after Pulp Fiction, hit after hit after hit. All did brilliantly well, and he was great in pretty much everything he did for a few years. But to follow it up with this, which is arguably a better performance than he gave in Pulp Fiction as Chili Palmer. I think one of the screen's most iconic and cool characters. He's just so goddamn cool. Fantastic character, played, pitched perfectly by John Travolta in every single way. And to say how fantastic he is in this film, John Travolta, there's other characters in this film that threaten to steal it from him. And I'm talking in particular of Gene Hackman as Harry Zim. Now, again, apparently Gene Hackman wasn't interested in doing this film initially because he's not really known for doing comedies. And apparently the director convinced him and said, look, I don't want you to play it like a comedy. I want you to play it straight, and then the audience will decide if it's going to be funny or not. My God, Gene Hackman's so good in this film. Without trying, it's effortless for him to just almost steal this film from John Travolta. What a great actor! What a great performance! And he's just marvelous in it. And then you've got Dennis Farina, he was one of my favourite character actors, certainly in the 80s and the 90s. And this is probably my favourite role of his. Ray Bones Barbone. I mean, he's just golden in this film. I think every single word that comes out of his mouth is practically a swear word. He's an awful character, but he's so funny and so memorable. I absolutely loved him. And then you've got Danny DeVito playing Martin Weir, who's like this, world famous actor, which is obviously where the title comes from. Get Shorty. The idea is they've got this killer script that Harry Zim's been holding on to for years. He makes B movies essentially, and he's got this script he's been holding on to that is his, as he calls it, Driving Miss Daisy. He thinks it's going to be a big, big hit, but he has to buy it for $500,000. So it's this massively, it's this golden goose of an egg, and Martin Weir, played by Danny DeVito, he showed an interest in that script at one point. So, they're all trying to, get meetings with him in order to get him to commit to this film. But at the same time, you've got Chili Palmer who's pitching his own film, which is basically his story, of how he got to LA and him being a loan shark and all this kind of stuff. So you've got all this stuff going on, and then you've got this other plot points of like money at an airport that Delroy Lindo's character has got locked in a locker at the airport that's being watched by the authorities. You've got all this stuff going off left, right and centre. Now, usually subplots in movies can be killers, but these are kind of done so wonderfully. They don't harm the film, they only help the film. And it just adds another layer onto it, sort of thing, because it's also brilliantly written and it's also brilliantly acted by everybody here. So I think this is an absolute classic from the 90s. I absolutely do. I was quite excited a few years ago when they brought it back as a TV show, and Ray Romano, I think, did he play like the Gene Hackman character? I think he did. And I remember watching the first couple of episodes, and I just remember thinking, nah, this is not what I expected or wanted, or it's not a patch on this film. So I didn't carry on with it. So you guys let me know if you did watch the TV show, what you thought of it. I was certainly disappointed. And it's interesting to think that I can't imagine anybody else playing Chili Palmer, but there were a few names in the running, apparently. You had Michael Keaton, Bruce Willis, Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman. They were all considered for the role. And I suspect once Pulp Fiction came out, there was only one winner to get that part, and that was obviously Travolta. Is this, for me, is this his best part he's ever done? Ooh, that's a debate, isn't it? Let me know in the comments, guys, what you think. Do you think he's been better in another part? Obviously, there's a debate to be had with Pulp Fiction. But I think Chili Palmer is definitely an iconic, ice-cold, cool character that just kind of chews up scenery and is just the best, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's me finished talking about Get Shorty. I love this film so much. I don't actually think you can get this on Blu-ray in the UK. I remember trying a couple of years ago and I couldn't find it on Blu-ray in the UK. I think you can only get it on Region 1. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. But I would love to have this in my collection. So, yeah, thanks for joining me for this classic review, guys. I will, of course, be back with plenty more content, reviews, as well as much, much more very, very soon.